I just like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. And I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Students, thank you so much for coming online today. Apologies if you came on a little bit early. We were going through some tech issues. It's one of the first time we've run a fair like in this format, so bear with us. But we should be smooth sailing from now. So what we're going to walk through today is, very quickly, I'm going to introduce you to the panel members that are on here today. And then we will talk through, I'm just going to quickly spotlight myself. This is me. So my name's Elliot. I'm an account manager here at Prosper. So we support these employers by advertising their campaigns and providing a lot of context to the students that are on this call, so you can get a bit of insight into these businesses before you apply. And then we've got these 4 panelists, and I will quickly go around the room and let them introduce each other. We'll start with yourself, Tennille.
Hi everybody. My name's Tennille. I work for Rheinmetall Defence Australia. So we're headquartered out at Redbank Plains, about 40 minutes outside of Brisbane. Head office is in Germany, so we are a subsidiary of the German mothership. I'm a psychologist and been in defence for about 6 years now. I look forward to chatting to you all. Cheers.
What about yourself, Katrina?
Welcome, everyone. My name is Katrina Gannon. I'm the Organisational Development Manager at Austal. I'm based out of the global headquarters here in Perth. Looking forward to speaking to you further about the shipbuilding that we do and the naval contracts that we have and commercial works that we have all across the globe, and look forward to your questions today.
Awesome. Good seeing you again, Kat. How about yourself, Leon?
Hey everyone, my name's Leon Purton. I'm the Manager for Engineering Enablement at Northrop Grumman Australia. Northrop Grumman Australia is a defence industry prime. We look to solve the toughest problems in defence, security and space. And I look forward to taking your questions.
Beautiful. And last but not least, we've got Scott.
Thanks, Elliot. Hello, everyone. My name's Scott. I'm the Early Careers Manager at Nova Systems, which is a engineering and technology solutions company, originally based in Adelaide, but has grown over the past 20 years into Australia's largest sovereign-owned defence engineering services provider. We work with both government and industry to deliver complex projects for our clients. So looking forward to talking with you today.
Brilliant. Nice to meet you all. And for any of the students on this call, if you do want to ask a question, there's a Q&A function at the bottom. So if we can try and refrain from asking questions in the chat box. The reason we're going to do this, we might answer it live. So if it's a question that I can put to one of the panelists, I'll redirect that question. Or if it's something that we can type out just directly, if it's a specific question to one of the panel members as well. For all the panel members, just to let you know, you can, when the Q&A function comes through, you can just type a response if you feel like you can answer it, or we can answer it live. It's up to you. So we're just going to go through a couple of questions, and essentially how we're going to walk this. You can answer questions, you can ask questions, students, whenever you want. But we'll have a kind of a time slot towards the end of this panel to have those questions answered. But if you have any questions throughout, we're happy to answer them throughout as well. So Scott, if you can just tell me, like, for the students on this call, like, what's an important piece of advice you give to students who want to work within the defence and aerospace sector?
Thanks, Elliot. Look, I'd say the number one piece of advice I would give is to be open to opportunities. Even though something, a job or a role that's offered to you might not be, look that exciting at first glance, once you get into it, you might find that it actually is going to open doors to those career pathways that you are really looking for. So I just, say, keep an open mind. Don't rule anything out until you've had a chance to talk to people about the opportunity and find out more about it. And be prepared to give things a go. That's the way to identify the best opportunities for yourself.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. And I think it's always a good way to just putting yourself out there. I think we get this advice pretty much every panel session we run, and whether that be through going to events like this, like putting yourself out there and asking questions. It might be going to physical career fairs. It might just be general kind of networking events with yourself and your kind of students. Any way that you can kind of put yourself out there, and all the people on this call, I'm sure, can agree that the bigger your network, the easier kind of life gets. Myself, like I've been referred to my last 3 opportunities. So I think having a good network around you of like-minded individuals is a really good way to kind of to set yourself apart early on in your career as well. What about yourself, Katrina? Any kind of specific advice or even more general advice that you'd give to students wanting to work in this sector?
Yeah, I'd love to. So really resonate with what Scott has said. I think adding on to that, for me, my piece of advice would be to not fear failure. This is a free license for you in the graduate program to make mistakes, skin your knees, get up, dust yourself off, use your network and resources that you have around you. You will be supplied with mentors and buddies and different leadership streams all the way through your graduate program. And it's utilizing those opportunities to then work through these failures and go, okay, this didn't work this time, but what lessons learned can I take away from this experience, and how can I grow and develop? That is the best learning experience that you can have. So don't fear failure.
Cracking piece of advice, not just for students, but anyone. Such a good piece of advice, Katrina. What about yourself, Leon? Any kind of specific, obviously with yourself being obviously in a technical role, but also obviously looking after the early careers as well. What advice would you give to the students on the call?
2 or 3 things for me, Elliot. The first being that if this is a career that you already know you want to pursue, so defence industry is something you want to chase, then set yourself up to illustrate that to a future potential manager or recruiter. So have a think about what activities and interests you're doing right now. How are you spending your time outside of university that might give recruiters and managers an indication that this is a field you've been thinking about for a little while. If you're not sure about where you want to end up, then I do resonate with Scott and Katrina that these opportunities I sort of consider them, imagine yourself as like a short-sighted frog. And in that you climb out on the first lily pad on a big pond and you can't really see what's out there. But once you explore that really big lily pad, you find out a little bit more about what you like and what you don't like. And then you're more informed for when you make the next jump. And then after you make that next jump, you've got a little bit more info. Maybe you don't like where you are. You can go back and sideways from there. But the graduate programs and the introductions to workforces that you get into straight out of your undergraduate programs are really opportunities for you to go and explore and work out what you like and what you don't like. So feel free to fail, feel free to learn from that failure. Know that you might not be in the job that you read on paper, might not look that interesting, but you might get a bunch of really good intangibles from that opportunity. And the third piece of advice, which is far more tactical, is just consider your preparations for job interviews. And my recommendation on that is take a few key events in your life, maybe sometimes during your undergraduate or other working in part-time jobs, and think of the stories where you might have had to deal with, a difficult problem, or when you've had to help out a team, or when somebody else was struggling with a subject or concept and what you helped them with, or how you had to stand up to somebody who is perhaps doing something wrong. Those types of stories are the types of questions that managers and recruiters are going to ask the early career people to try and get an understanding of those intangibles, the stuff that's not in your resume, like what type of person are you? What behaviours do you show that resonate with our company values? Those types of things. So that'd be the 3 pieces of advice that I'd offer to people. 1, make sure you're setting yourself up for that future job. 2, just acknowledge the fact that the lily pad you jump onto the first time mightn't look like what you thought you were going to jump onto, but it'll probably teach you some things. And number 3, focus on some of those stories that might help you as you get to a job interview and how you can weave that into answering some of the questions you might be faced by recruiters and managers.
Absolutely love that analogy, Leon. I love little analogies that I think the one that my dad gave me when I went into just the general sales was like, just treat it like an apprenticeship. do 4 years, change around, do a lot of different things and find out what you do like. And then, yeah, you obviously set yourself up, and as long as you're learning on the way, it doesn't really matter. I think it's good just to get some experience on the way as well. What about yourself, Tennille?
Yeah, hard following on from those three pieces of advice from Scott, Katrina, and Leon. A similar, I guess, echoing what they said, what you're doing now is already the first step in the right direction. So coming to these fairs, learning about the industry and different jobs. I really wish that I had done that during my undergraduate studies. I think my advice would be to, similar to Leon, to almost let go of what you believe is going to happen after university. So we often think, oh, go get the grad program, then I'll do this and I'll become a middle manager, specialist, whatever it is. Your career definitely won't be linear, which can be really difficult if you're quite, regimented in your aspirations, which is great. But I think letting go of preconceptions of how you think your career will look and trying out everything. I know for me, what I'm doing right now, I never, ever even knew about, 3 years ago. But I just kept saying yes. It's completely different. It's similar to what I studied, but completely different. But when you start in an organization, it's also quite difficult, not difficult, but you have to remember that you are the new person. You're obviously used to doing quite well. You've obviously done quite well at university, and it can be really hard to go into a business and now be the new person, potentially with the least amount of knowledge. But I think the best thing you can do is to not see that as a weakness at all, because everybody has to start from scratch, but to absolutely embrace it, to go into every meeting thinking, what can I learn? I've got 2 ears for a reason and 1 mouth. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to listen, and just be a sponge to everything. And you'll also find that if you do join defense and aerospace, it's kind of as well death by acronyms. So get ready to keep yourself with a little acronym manager going as well, because people talk in a different language when you get to those meetings. But don't worry, one day you'll find yourself talking like that too, and it's all fun.
Yeah, I think acronyms are part of I think in your industry, much more than some. So some meetings are run in a different language, as you said. So it's a good little insight to not get overwhelmed when that starts happening. And we'll continue with yourself, Tennille. So with Rheinmetall, what does your organisation actually look for? Is there anything specific you look for in an application, and what the students actually need to do to progress kind of through the rounds of your recruitment process?
So for us, what we're looking for is not so much the grades. So whilst grades are obviously very important, they show your resilience and tenacity and how studious you are. We are in, let's call it a ramp up. So we're almost building a plane as we're trying to fly it. So we are building and designing all of these tanks, AI systems, but we're also ramping up. So in the last 2 years, we've grown from roughly 100 people to 650 people. So you have so many people starting every single Monday. We don't have a lot of procedures in place at times. So what we're looking for is people who can have the initiative, who aren't expecting to be, I guess, hand-fed. Like, we do need people who can come in, hit the ground running, ask questions, go away, research on their own, come back with ideas. But that's also one of the best things I find about Rheinmetall is we don't have this exact way that we do everything. It's very open. If you have a really good idea, present it. 9 times out of 10, it'll be accepted. It's really good. You're not just a number. It's a massive business, but you feel like you're really contributing. So we're looking for people really who have that initiative, that drive. It's always good to really be interested in defense, because if you've got a passion for something, you'll just naturally be successful. You work 40 plus hours a week. You at least want to do something that you enjoy with exciting products. So maybe do a bit of research and make sure it's really the industry that you're interested in as well, because you spend a lot of your life there.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. We'll circle back to yourself, Leon. Anything specifically that Northrop Grumman look for in an application, or what they can do to kind of progress through your recruitment process?
Yeah, there's a few things that I think are more important than others. Tennille did hint at it as well, and I've got a couple of graduates directly in my team that I recruited in the last 12 months. So I'll give a bit of indication from that as well. It's really difficult to build a resume as an early career person, because basically you've got what you've done at school and maybe a part-time job at a fast food chain or something, or maybe stacking shelves, right? And from that, you've got to convince a recruiter or a manager that you're a right person. And often it's for an exceptionally technical job, maybe something that you need, as Daniel said, to hit the ground running. So what I'd encourage you to do is put some thought and consideration into those intangibles that you bring to a job. So bring who you are and what type of things you've done. And as an example, you could be some hardship that you've personally overcome and still managed to achieve your university degree. It could be the junior sports coaching that you participate in. It could be the musical instrument that you've picked up and maintained throughout high school and still play into university. Those little things that show a little bit about your thought process, some of that grit and resilience that Tennille hinted at, some of those other elements that are going to bring a well-rounded person to the workplace. Recruiters and managers don't want to bring somebody into their company that they don't really know and understand, because it makes it difficult then to get them up to speed. But if you can give in your interview process a little bit of insight into who you are and what you bring outside of your degree and qualification, which is sort of like your table stakes. That's what gets you through the door to the interview in the first place. Either some qualification or competence, that'll get you through. But then you've got to show who you are, how you work, how you support the team, how you can learn independently, how you can bring value with little guidance. Those things are what's going to really distinguish you as a candidate.
Again, really good advice there, Len. I think it's probably something I can jump in here. I mean, myself being in careers for 6 years, specifically around students for about 2 to 3 now, do the foundational stuff well. So grammar, like putting together CVs, if you're putting together a cover letter, you may not think it matters. I guarantee you if a HR manager or a recruitment, whoever's running that recruitment process, because it's so competitive, unfortunately, the little things mean a lot. So if there's spelling errors, if not the format of the CV doesn't matter as much. Obviously, it does matter to some extent, but I think having just the grammatical side of things kind of really crisp. So that's not an issue for you to move forward to the next stage. Those really foundational things are super important as well. But I think what Leon said, yeah, if you can leverage on anything you've done, if you've traveled, like if you've done these things that build out your personality and you're starting to find out a little bit about who you are, like trying to promote that on a piece of paper can be quite difficult, but trying to do that as much as you can is a really important way to set yourself apart in that recruitment process. What about yourself, Scott? Anything specifically for Nova Systems that you guys look for?
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. Look, I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. One general piece of advice is that if you're applying for a role in defence industry and as part of the application you need to answer some questions, then make sure you answer the question, that you read the question and answer it in the way that's intended. We occasionally, obviously, everyone gets lots of applications each year, and for example, there may be a question there about which one of our core values resonates with you most, and why, for example. If the answer doesn't mention one of the core values, then that sort of indicates that you haven't necessarily read the question very well. So I'd say take the time to prepare your application, review what you've written before you submit it, and make sure that you actually address the question that's being asked. The other thing, which is I think very important to Nova, and Leon and Tennille touched on this as well, is although a lot of the roles that we offer are technical in nature, in engineering or logistics or finance or business, all of the work we do is really about the people we're interacting with, whether it's internal to the company or externally with our clients. And therefore, your people skills are what set you apart from other candidates. And we're looking for those people that have those examples of volunteering or having a part-time job or being involved in a club or society where they can show that how they've stepped up and taken on a role where they've been able to use their people skills to their advantage. Because it's really important, I guess, in our industry that you are able to, communicate well with the client, understand what they're after and what they're looking for in a solution, and then, take that, develop a solution, and then come back and, communicate your proposal back to them in a compelling and easy to understand way. So, people skills are, in particular, what we're looking for when we get to, the later stages of our recruitment process. As Leon said, that your academic results or your degree are what sort of gets you in the door, but what is going to set you apart is those intangible skills, your people skills, your communication skills, and things like that.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that as well, Scott, comes from how you portray yourself in an interview process. Now, a lot of interviewing for me was something I was always relatively good at straight out of school. So it's not for everyone. And I think if it's not for you, I think it all comes back down to preparation. So knowing who you're going in to meet, about the business, and you can really kind of just go into that room with confidence. It's probably the most important thing going into an interview. You're not going to be expected to come in and know everything. You're coming straight out of university. But having a good understanding about what you want to get out of a graduate program, I think is a really important thing. Having questions to ask that interviewer and having tailored questions for every person you go and interview. So like, I think it was Leon, you mentioned, or it might have been yourself, Scott, about like the values, asking questions around like, it doesn't have to be as basic as like, why is it you value, but like that value resonates to me because of X, Y, and Z. So showing that you've done the research on the company, it comes through in spades when you're actually sitting down with the person, because you can feel that they've gone out of their way, they've taken the time to actually research you as a business, which is super important.
Absolutely.
Lastly, but not least, what about yourself, Katrina? Anything specific for Austal when people are coming through your recruitment process?
Yes, well, agree with all the statements that the crew have shared so far. I guess I'm thinking about the recruitment process. It's about getting your foot in the door and showing some of the things that Leon, Tennille, and Scott have mentioned. But then as you progress through the stages, like interview, assessment centres, so with assessment centres in particular, we're not looking for that person that's the loudest in the room necessarily. We're looking for people that are showing that they can work across a team, that they're not just trying to showcase themselves. It is important to sell yourself and promote yourself, but it's also links back to the values and ties back to the values again, around the interaction, the communication, helping other team members out. That's all linked back to Austal's company values. So we're looking for those types of personality traits, not always that loudest person. So don't feel like if you are an omnivert, so someone that is an introverted extrovert or an introverted type person, that you're going to get missed out in that process. We are looking for particular values and qualities around that process. When it comes to an interview, if you are successful in progressing to that stage, I think just to attest to what Elliot was saying, it's if you don't know the answer, actually offering and saying very honestly and openly, which links back to values again, as you can see, is I don't know that answer. However, this is what I think would look accurate, and I can take you through the process. Because what that actually does is it shows your problem solving ability and how you can work through situations. And those are the foundational elements that we tie back to aptitude for the role, and we can teach you the rest. So I guess those would be the core aspects that I would recommend for people to consider through the application process.
Yeah, brilliant. That's some really good advice. I think we have similar but different advice when we're coming through, but generally we've got a new cohort of students that's probably potentially hearing this advice for the first time. So always really interested to hear that advice as well. We'll circle back to yourself, Leon. So for people who actually do come into your program, they land a job with Northrop Grumman, like what advice would you give them to like survive and to thrive in that first year? And then what shouldn't they do in that first year?
Yeah, it's one of the systems that we've put in place inside Northrop Grumman is a cohort system we call the Young Professionals Network. So we encourage people that join our company in the first 2 years to join this network and establish a cohort from across the company of other people that are in similar career positions to them. And the motivation for that is to teach to teach them some of the things that they don't pick up through schooling and qualifications that are really going to help them in their professional career. So we talk about, you know, public speaking or understanding bias, or, you know, financial management for engineers, or communicating risk, whatever it might be. Some of these other elements that exist outside of your undergraduate, tertiary or secondary qualifications, and will really assist you as you grow as a professional in a workplace. So that's one thing we set up. The second point is that I encourage, and I think Katrina mentioned it earlier, is to set yourself up with a mentor or a buddy in those first few years. You're going to have a lot of stupid questions, and that's okay. I still have them every day, but the value of having one of those mentors or buddies is you can develop a relationship where you feel comfortable asking those questions. And one of the real values that the early career people bring to your organization is that willingness to ask the question, because it sometimes unearths those gaps in your systems and processes and practices that you probably haven't considered because you're not coming at it with a fresh set of eyes. So there's real value in asking those questions and being really curious. I call it catalytic curiosity. So your curiosity triggers curiosity in others. You know, why is it like that? And that's a really powerful tool. Set yourself up with a mentor. Don't try and get in. So if you're joining as a junior engineer, don't try and latch on to the chief engineer and get them to be your mentor. Find somebody just a couple of steps in front of you who's been through some of the issues you're trying to work through, solve some of the problems, worked out who they needed to talk to, because they're going to be the best value for you. So if you can do those things, that'll really help you thrive in those first few years.
Yeah, brilliant. I've just had a very good question come through the chat. So I thought instead of just going through around circles, I thought I'd keep it quite open. And I'm opening this up to all the panelists. So what do you think the biggest challenge a graduate can face when trying to enter the defence industry? Oh, the silence means it's a good question.
It's a really good question. I think my personal opinion, what I find about defence from the outside is it might come across as quite intimidating, potentially quite foreign. It doesn't really have like a soft and fluffy approach to its marketing. It's very which can be intimidating, but it's really not like that. Once you get within the business, particularly I can only speak for the defence companies I've worked for, Rheinmetall, Airbus, it's really great when you're inside. Don't be intimidated. It's okay. I think I've gone off track.
That's all right. Any other points to that question? Like what the biggest challenge you kind of see a grad would face?
One thing, there's a question in the Q&A about citizenship and permanent residency. So because we generally have a customer who is defence, that means we generally need to have Australian security clearances, which generally means you need to be an Australian citizen. There are exceptions to that, but it generally holds true in most cases. So that's one for the international students. Sometimes can be difficult cracking open that doorway, because it means you've got to work partitioned from a bunch of the other work because of who our customer is and how we manage those. The second part is, as somebody mentioned earlier, defence is perhaps one of the heavier acronym industries. There's whole meetings that go by where you'll be writing down things that you have to Google later or ask somebody about, because you're like, I've been working in, like for me, I'm 22 years in defence industry and I still don't know all of the acronyms that get used, or there's plenty of acronyms that get used in multiple ways. And so the same acronym could have a different context depending on the meeting you're in. And it's very confusing. So for some people that the feeling out of your depth when you first join defence industry is really confronting, because you're like, I just don't understand what's going on. People are talking and I know I can understand the words because they're in a language I understand, but they don't have any meaning to me. And that's where the real value of those mentors and buddies in your early phases of your career are really useful. The last part of it is, and Tennille and I were speaking about this earlier, is it's quite a small industry in Australia. It's big enough, but everybody sort of knows everybody. And then once you get into defence industry, the doors open up for you, but the first door to get in is sometimes a little bit challenging, just because you've got to get in through graduate programs, or you've got to find the right entry. As Scott mentioned before, it might not feel like the right first job for you. It might not be the one that you were looking for, but it is the one that'll open up the networks and have avenues for you as you get in. So too often people are put off because they can't find the job that best suits them as the first step in. But that's often because there isn't the best job, and you have to get into a company and then create it for yourself rather than try and find it. So, yeah,
good advice, Leon. And we'll circle back to yourself, Scott. So, any specific advice on students who do land a job with Nova Systems, like what to do in their first year, how to thrive, and then potentially what not to do as well?
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. I think we sort of I touched on a few of the points already, but just going back to the people point just mentioned, it's probably quite easy to be intimidated, working in defence industry, or even within the company that you join. And I would say that just remember that at the end of the day, everyone is another human, just like you. We're all people, and when you initiate that conversation, you'll actually find that the vast majority of people are friendly and approachable, and willing to help you make a great start to your career in defence industry. So don't be intimidated. Particularly when you're on a client site, you'll see defence personnel in uniform with lots of shiny stuff on their uniforms, and different ranks and things like that, and but at the end of the day, they're more than willing to have a conversation with you, just like anybody else that they work with. The acronyms, of course, it's a steep learning curve at the start that everyone has to deal with, and keeps dealing with throughout their career. So you'll just get used to that, like other parts of the job. On the citizenship and security clearance front, I'd say it's particularly for graduates that often don't have a security clearance when they're hired. Also, it's important for the employer that you're going to work for to obtain that clearance as quickly as possible, and that's often occurring before your first day. So I'd say make sure that you sort of get onto that as soon as you can. That is going to make your transition into work a lot easier. Your employer is going to appreciate the effort that you put in there. That'd be my top tips, and just make the most of the opportunities.
Brilliant, thanks, Scott. What about yourself, Tennille? Any specific advice for people who come into Rheinmetall successfully?
Yeah, the first piece of advice is it will be quite new, particularly if you're coming from being a pure student and just working a few hours a week. Becoming a full-time employee is completely different regarding your work-life balance. Make sure that you look after yourself. So you're already under probably a lot of pressure to perform and to look really good because you're new. You're probably putting a lot of pressure on yourself, I would assume. But just take it easy. Make sure you see your family, your friends, keep up with all of your hobbies, because that will make work more enjoyable as well. You don't want to burn out straight away. Also, as the rest of everyone else has said, is finding a mentor. It doesn't even need to be a formalized mentorship. At Rheinmetall, we often have buddies. So it's somebody just maybe cross department or just up one level from you who you can really go to, and not just for the technical advice, but just for advice on different policies in the business, how to overcome maybe a tricky presentation you've got coming up, or you want feedback, etc. So definitely find someone in the business who can help you, and everybody is more than happy to help you because everybody has been in the same position as you. So don't feel like you're a burden to anybody. Everyone wants each other to do really well. Then we do really well as a company. So don't feel intimidated as much as you will feel. Obviously, very natural response.
Awesome. Thanks,
And
Tennille.
I think, sorry, one of the really
Sure.
good questions is not to latch onto, I've seen a lot of graduates come into the business and people know people. So everybody can see when somebody is acting out, particularly at the graduate assessment centers. You'll see, the really loud person, but as the recruiters, you are aware of the people who are, tickering away in the corner, getting the job done, being tenacious, working with integrity. We do definitely see that. Don't be intimidated seeing that other person who might be the larrikin and the loudest in the group making the decision. Don't even worry about them. Just try to stay in your own lane, be your authentic self. And then when you come into the business, I think Leon said, just try not to attach onto the chief engineer, because you see that all the time. They go straight to the top. I feel like it probably makes you look a bit worse, it's a bit full on, let's be honest.
No, good advice, Tennille. And before we wrap up, just a final question. We've just from yourself, Katrina, any kind of advice with students coming into Austal?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with our program, we've got quite a bit of structure involved. So we've got 7 training programs, we've got travel opportunities, we've got the dedicated professional mentoring program and the buddy network. We have professional development offsites as well. So I think it's utilising those opportunities for growth. It's not just showing up; it's actually being present. It's being involved. It's asking questions. A lot of the grads that have been very successful at Austal have asked questions or come up with new ideas. One of the graduates had said, "Hey, we haven't gone to Cairns. Why don't we send graduates over there?" I pulled a few strings, looked into a few things, and we set up that program opportunity for them. So it's about being curious. It's about looking at new opportunities within the organisation and really drawing from all the structure and the great things that we offer you as part of the graduate program.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kat. And before we wrap up, we've got about 3 odd minutes left. We'll just do a kind of final word, if you can keep it relatively short so we can finish on time. In one sentence, Scott, we'll start with yourself. Why should students come and apply to Nova?
Thanks, Elliot. Look, I think what makes Nova Systems truly unique is our people. We like to think about ourselves as a place where the best and brightest minds can come together, to challenge each other, collaborate, innovate, and solve complex problems for our clients. And that's why I think it's a great place to work, and I hope that all our graduates will find that as well when they join us.
Brilliant. Thanks, Scott. What about yourself, Leon?
Yeah, so I've been with Northrop Grumman for just over 2 years now, and I don't regret the decision in joining the company. We working on aircraft, missiles, satellites, secure communication systems, and other truly novel problems to defence, security and space. And we do have an amazing team. So I look forward to seeing the next round of graduates come through.
Brilliant. Katrina, why would students want to come and work for Austal?
Well, we get to work on amazing naval vessels. So we build 15% of the US naval fleet as well, being one of the only Australian companies that does that. There's the travel opportunities, the networking opportunities across our 6,000 employee base, and also just the team and culture vibe. I think it's really got a fantastic family feel. And when you're a new starter coming in, like I was about 13 months ago now, everyone's very welcoming. They see that you get stuck on those acronyms that people have been talking about on this session, and really go out of their way to help you. I also think that it's an exciting time to join Austal because we are going going through a digital transformation. So for those people that are really interested in being involved in a project from the get-go around some of the technology transformations and in innovations that we're doing with our clients, it's a great time to join Austal.
Awesome. Thanks, Kat. And last but not least, Tennille.
Yeah, so Rheinmetall, quite the new kids on the block in Australia. Why you should join is we have the unique opportunity to both design and manufacture all of our products here on Australian soil. So you get to design autonomous vehicles, tracked tanks, trucks, wearable soldier systems, you name it, there's a lot going on. Also, if you're in Brisbane, you get to roll around in the tanks on the test track as well. no 2 days are the same. Some days I'm out in the barracks in the back of a tank, or we're out at out in the field recovering and rolling over a vehicle. So it's a lot of hands-on with the customer. We have a great relationship with them. But you also feel like you are a part of a wider family and everyone's really welcoming.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, panel. And if there's some questions that weren't answered today, I do apologise. But if you have any of those questions, you can reach out to any of the people on this call. We'll also be sharing this recording after to all the people who attended as well. So thank you so much for coming to this panel. And to the panelists, thank you very much for coming on and giving your advice on the defence industry and individually about your companies as well.